Great. All right. Thank you all. And yeah, welcome to a session on AI and where we see it being applied effectively across retail and the supporting functions in supply chain and distribution. I think this will be a little bit on the sort of use cases in industry, but also covering some of the Microsoft features and what we see as effective approaches and strategies for adopting AI and how to actually get some use out of it. So let's start with the basics, which is why are we talking about this in the first place? And really the key is in thinking about AI in the same way we would anything else. This is not a new way of applying technology that suddenly requires a radically different thought process in terms of understanding where and what it can do from us for other technologies. It's the same themes. It's aligning to what the business is trying to achieve and finding it as a practical and effective way of helping deliver that. I guess what's different with AI is the sheer span of where you can apply it, both in terms of sort of inward looking around employee engagement or success and how they run their processes, but also externally from the content that you push out, how you engage with your customers and your wider supply chain, and how you start to knit all of this together. So it's a field that's obviously moving very quickly, that we've got a lot of change to take advantage of, and also one where there is enormous scope for sort of creativity in terms of how we apply this. And with that comes some key considerations that we need to think about for AI transformation, both in terms of where we will apply this, where is there value in us giving attention to AI and its implementation? Where can we effectively spend our time and our money to generate a return for the business, both in terms of an increase in profit or a reduction in risk, but where is there real value in applying AI? And then secondly, how are we going to do it? Have we got the data that we need to feed these processes? Are we going to build this internally? Can we configure it from solutions that are out there in the market? Are there functions coming shortly down somebody's product roadmap that we can simply adopt at very little cost, but hopefully quite a lot of gain? And how will we organize around it? I think this is one of the questions a lot of organizations are starting to grapple with, to say, what's the right way of tackling this? Is this something that is very much led by individuals? Is this something that's led by the business? Is this something that's managed as an IT project? What's the right way of structuring for success? And I think that has a different approach depending on what we're talking about. And as ever with these sort of very broad pieces of technology that we can apply in many different ways, we need some sort of categorization or map to start thinking about the different components of them or the different applications in ways that lend itself to sort of sensible thinking across these different pillars. So we tend to split AI up into three buckets. We've got the embedded AI, the stuff that's just there, Copilots, OpenAI, ChatGPT, machine learning based algorithms embedded in products that you already have available to you today. This is really quite similar to almost any other sort of feature that you would get in a technology product. It's there, it's available, and you can use it. And in a lot of cases, there's a very large number of small incremental improvements that can be gained by picking up on these pieces of embedded AI that are being seeded throughout our products and technology world week in, week out at the moment. The next bucket is what we can do with the ready-made building blocks that are given to us. Microsoft obviously put a lot of effort into this through Copilot Studio and the endpoints in Azure and the low-code and no-code tools within the Power Platform that help you deploy some of these tools. And this, again, it's sort of similar to what they've tried to do with Power Apps and Power Automate and Power BI, of taking away a lot of the technical legwork and creating a set of experiences that are much easier for you to build with around the challenges you've got in your business. Hopefully this sort of removes some of the need for understanding deeply complex AI models and getting stuck in some of the more data science side, and enables you to build around the challenges you've got today. And then finally, we've got the sort of build your own. If you have a really compelling business case for a large scale investment, and you're going to go out of your way to try and build something that you think can really differentiate you from your competitors, then there are the tools, again, within Azure or within the other platforms that allow you to build something from scratch. And across all of these, obviously, you have very different levels of investment. And as a result, you need a different level of business case and justification to go down any of these paths. But I think what we're seeing is a shift to the right. So if we look back even 4 or 5 months ago when we were having conversations around this, it was very much a case of take the embedded stuff, but actually composable and build your own are a little bit further out. And what we're seeing already, literally month by month, as new features and new products are released, is a massive expansion of what you can do with the embedded AI and with the relatively low effort in terms of the composable AI. And I think this is a trend that will continue. So while we do see and are doing some projects where we build something much more personalized to a company and really built from the ground up on the base services, those are edge cases where the vast majority of effort is going today is either in sort of unlocking the productivity that can be gained from some of the Copilot tools that are out there today, or starting to piece together the building blocks, the ready-made components of AI to create sort of tailored experiences to the companies that we're working with. And I think this trend will continue, and I think this is sort of a good lens through which to assess any more major implementations. If you're going to go down the path of building something from scratch, one, you need to be sure as far as you can that it's going to work and add value. And two, you need to make sure that you're not going to get overtaken in that space in 3 to 6 months' time by a company that's building that out as their standalone product, where you could adopt and ride on the back of their investment rather than bearing the cost yourself. So I'd like to start a little bit at the bottom end of this and talk about Copilot and where it's going, expand that a little bit through Dynamics today and just rattle through what some of the features are that are already available, and then talk a little bit more about how we can build out from there within the industry context. So Microsoft Copilot has been kicking around now for a few months, both in terms of the Microsoft Office version sat across PowerPoint and Word, but also in the Microsoft Dynamics space across the business application suite. Microsoft, as you would expect, are busy trying to understand, as I think all applicators of AI are, what works and what doesn't, and where does this have impact. And we found that there are a couple of different ways of sort of delivering this. We've seen organizations simply release it into the wild and then come back to their users asking, where has it worked? Where have you saved time? What actions has it been helpful with? And then have turned that into a program that they can roll out more widely. And we've seen other people go the other way and try and build out sort of curated scenarios and a business case, and then begin to release these tools into their users. Regardless of which way you go, the overriding feedback is that there's a significant time saving. And when you look at what's required from a time saving perspective to justify the cost of the 365 licenses, it's actually relatively small. So you start a few documents from the basis of Copilot rather than from scratch. You catch up on a couple of meetings that you haven't seen, and you spend a bit less time searching for information across SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams sites, and all the rest of it to get to where you want to go. And very quickly, you've started to make a whole load of your sort of mundane and day-to-day tasks a lot faster and a lot easier to work with. But even within the Copilot space, we still need a bit of a think about how we get it out effectively. And there's generally a very different level of adoption by different people and by different teams in the business. There are some things when you get Copilot that are just obvious. You can ask a question in Teams and find a piece of information. There are others that require a little bit more imagination. How to use it to generate effective PowerPoint content, for example, or how to plug in a couple of different sort of data sources or reference material to use it to generate information based off your context. And in these things, we generally find some people are much better than others at thinking around the problem and getting creative in how to use these sort of tools. And in that regard, starting to work out how we share that information, how we teach people about how to use these tools and what's possible to expand their horizons is really quite key in getting adoption away from just a very small group of highly motivated users and out into the wider populations within business. And as part of that, we've got to recognize that there are different users in different areas. If I look at people that are sat on a help desk versus those within finance, there are different needs and different types of use case that they want to solve. So I need to think about how I curate that by the different types of people and the different roles within my organization that are going to develop them. And that goes as much for the Microsoft Copilot as it does for the Dynamics 365 Copilots that are coming out at quite a rate of knots across all of the different parts of the Microsoft application stack. And again, within here, in a lot of ways, these are just being released like any other feature or enhancement would to the solutions. But again, actually, how you use these, how people understand what's possible and really get the most out of them, need some preparation and some thought in terms of that adoption program. And that's something we work with quite a lot of companies on, to think about how to upskill people, how to apply in these different areas, and how to start to join together the different types of action and information that you can get. So these aren't just sort of individual areas of efficiency, but start to join up into a pattern of behavior and processes that run across your different workloads and begin to get more and more of that return for the effort involved. Within supply chain, distribution and retail, there are already a number of these very specific examples that are coming out. Quite a lot around supply chain and supply chain risk analysis and risk mitigation is one area that has, I think, a lot of potential, because there's an enormous number of records moving around within your supply chain. Keeping on top of all of those and the interactions between them takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And this type of problem is typical of the use case where generative AI is effective. Give me lots and lots of complexity in my data points, give me lots of information with relations between all of these different points, and ask a human to sift through it. And it takes a lot of different views, a lot of work, a lot of manual effort to get me to the point of understanding the implications of what's constantly changing within that. And a supply chain with different forms of shipment, different routes, different supplies, different products is a great example of where that's happening. This is the sort of thing where using a large language model to begin to knit together all of those different actions is very effective, and something that can then draw out, this is a high impact change. This will affect a large proportion of your supply chain, or will have a major influence on what you're going to receive and when you're going to get it. And it's also something where that sort of discovery feature is very useful in terms of being able to ask questions naturally and return answers that use BI, use data, and use the base records in your system to gather all of that into a single place and let you as a user see it, understand it, and then decide what to do next. The warehouse is quite a similar one for that. We have a huge number of movements in any given warehouse in terms of people moving around, products moving around, and all of the different sort of timings and longevity of those data points within that. So again, it's something where the optimization of what happens is a great way of applying BI and the AI sat on top of it to begin to optimize locations within the warehouse, the routing between different sites, the direction of work to different people and different areas within that warehouse, and how all of that constantly changes. And that idea of constant change is another way of thinking about this. One is to sort of look at problems in isolation and say, right, I've got a warehouse and here's where everything is. How do I optimize it? And that's our traditional approach. And we lay things out on a particular path that people are going to walk around. And then every now and again, we go back to that and we try and optimize it again. The more you've got tools that can do that for you, the more frequently you can do those optimizations. And you can start to say, well, a day and a night shift is actually a different set of actions. One's based far more on picking, the other's based more on replenishment. Will let me organize my work, my structures, and my routing differently for those two different shifts. Maybe I have peaks and I have waves of work coming through around the start of a season launch or a new product launch. And in those cases, having something that can react much more quickly and reorganize work on a very short-term basis begins to say, well, my axis of optimization is actually now time, and I can optimize for the different sorts of activities happening at different points in time rather than taking a much more static approach. And I think this is what we're starting to see in various sort of lenses through different parts of the solution. So if I go into commerce now, there's an awful lot around the creation of content, how I create product content and marketing content for different types of users and different journeys through my organization, both in terms of the content that supports that, but then actually how I engage with people, how I route them through the solutions, and how I begin to tailor that experience to every individual and every subsegment of my customer base. So again, it's about that variation of content and process according to the sorts of people, the sorts of activities, and the time in which we're engaging with them. So through everything that I've just talked about there, we've got quite a similar kind of base blueprint of what we're doing. And this is a useful way of thinking about how we build AI as we start to try and generate more complex use cases. It's what Microsoft have done with Copilot. It's what you would do or we would do when we start to compose a solution based off all of these different building blocks. And actually, it's the same foundational approach where you start to build something from scratch yourself. At the bottom, we have data and infrastructure, the ability to draw together the information on top of which AI is going to run. And as always, there are a number of different types of information there. There are the documents, there are the structured databases that we have, there are the historical data stores that go back possibly across systems and across different sort of structures within our organization that we need to draw together and make available to these models to draw from. Then we have the AI component itself. Copilot is one that bundles up bits around the indexing and the search and the language models and the generative AI components and creates all of that within one go that you can use through Copilot Studio or other sort of similar components. And then finally, we've got the delivery of that AI experience. And that could be through a front end screen that says, hey, where's my help desk that I can go in and query all past customer or employee questions around a particular topic and draw together my reference material and my generated answers. Or it could be in some of those supply chain examples. How do I see the impacts of what's going on within a particular part of the process within my supply chain network or within my warehouse, and how do I make action on that? How do I change the configuration? How do I direct pieces of work, or how do I actually do something with the information provided? And I think in a reflection of where AI is in terms of its maturity today, that's typically where it stops. What I don't think many, if any, people are advocating for at the moment is full automation on the back of AI-driven decision making. This is still very much, I would suggest, in a phase where we use it to support our decision making, where we use it to give us information, to get us there faster and with a more complete view of what's going on, but where the judgment and the application of that judgment still very much sits with us as the users and the drivers of those processes. So when we look in industry and we look in retail, we've got a number of different ways of applying AI. And quite a few of these are not new. Demand forecasting within your sort of planning and supply side of your organization has been around for 20 plus years. Similarly, in fraud detection and cybersecurity, again, an application of machine learning in payment processing has been there for more than a decade. Similarly, with some of the sort of staff planning and analysis features and some of the staff engagement as well. So in a lot of these areas, there is a continuous development of what's going on, but it's not radically new. It's actually features and products that are well established within industry that we can take advantage of. The creative side of it is quite new, and the ability to create content based off generative AI, either for static content on web pages, dynamic content based around the user experiences and personalization that goes with that, or in customer service terms in the chatbot, that's advancing very, very quickly. And as I showed with the Copilot stuff, that's starting to come through more and more into the products that you use every day. Where I think we're starting to go is really around some of the core challenges of retail. And again, back to the start, AI is valuable when it solves the problems that we already have. And in retail, how we engage with our customers effectively and how we do that, depending on the context of whether they're the sort of person that comes into store or goes online or has a mixed journey across the two, and how we do that, taking account of people's different interests and way of engaging, that's been a fundamental problem of retail and will continue to be. How we maximize the value of each customer and each transaction and each interaction with them. And the same for product. What we buy, where we put it, and how much we sell it for are the core challenges of retail. And up to this point, there's, with the possible exception of price optimization, there's been relatively little support in terms of this from the AI point of view. And I think this is what we're beginning to see change, and we'll see much, much more significant changing over the next 2 or 3 years. I think range and assortment planning is probably going to be the most fundamental one in terms of a change of our processes that actually in a lot of ways have remained fairly static for the last 20 or 30 years. And I think it's in this hyper personalization of content really across all interactions that a consumer will have with a brand or with a company that we're going to see quite a big shift from a consumer point of view. If you think about the level of personalization that you can achieve on a website today, it's quite narrow. You might change some of the sort of landing pages and the imagery on that based on some of the segmentation you've got on the customer, but you probably wouldn't change the product description or the hierarchy or some of the theming of how somebody navigates through the site or the way you rank the products within there. But the more we can build a model of the consumer and the more granular we can be and the more reactive we can be to that information in real time while somebody's landing on our site and moving around it, I think the more we will start to see websites shifting and changing depending on who you are and what you're looking at. But I think in all of these cases, we're at the very early stages of this. You could take a lot of the building blocks of retail and build a lot of this for yourself, but it would be quite a difficult justification to say that this is worth investing as an individual retailer and committing to. I think in a lot of cases, this is where we want to see Microsoft and more specialist partners begin to build those products and adopt them for us. But it's sort of not all in that state. As we break these out, there are a huge number of areas where we can already use it today. I think, the customer insights, the analysis of how people are browsing with us, the segmentation of those, and how that feeds into our omni-channel journeys, our pricing strategy, and our marketing. A lot of that is there today, and we should be using it. We should be trying to get more accurate in how we spend our marketing budget, and we should be trying to get an ever increased conversion ratio from all of these interactions into our base and how people engage with us and what they get. And anywhere we can use it on the cost reduction side, we should. And I think this comes through over and over again in terms of the supply chain and the distribution, in just relentlessly looking at the efficiency of our networks, the risk that sits within those, and how we reduce the cost of running them. And whether that's in the prediction and the automation side, or whether it's at the other end of the spectrum of how we collaborate with our suppliers and try and automate some of those interactions between them, or streamline our operations across different parts of a network between freight forwarders and suppliers and buyers, and smooth the path and reduce some of the manual work that goes with it. There are a number of key areas of the supply chain distribution world where AI has a significant part to play already in terms of the efficiency and effectiveness of our operations. And whether that's in the performance analysis, in the sustainability side of it, particularly around energy costs, or some of the more sort of prosaic risk management and compliance side of it, there are a lot of use cases that we're already implementing, either with the standard Microsoft features or with sort of extensions to those using the composable components we've got of AI today. So across all of these areas, there are a few sort of key pillars that we've really got to put in place. The incremental AI, your copilots and your basic tools that are out there today, they just bring a raft of small improvements to the way people work, and an improvement in terms of how employees generally find their roles and where they can focus their energies and attentions on. Then we've got the differential AI, which is a much more targeted investment or bet on a particular development. And this takes careful thought, it takes a real understanding of the problems that you're trying to solve, but as a result, the investment in those areas is much higher. And it's worth splitting those out so we can think about the basic sort of improvements in efficiency and not confuse those conversations with much more major changes to the way we try and work based off the new features that AI gives us. Underpinning both of those, and indeed all of the use cases for AI, is the requirement for data. And this is the bit that it's impossible to undersell the importance of. Everything that we do now, that will come next, and will continue to develop over the next few years, is going to be based on the data that you own. If you look at the Microsoft products, it's, if you deploy Copilot, it's running on your data in your context. If you read the news around ChatGPT and what that's trained on, it's easy to see why, as an organization, you're going to seriously worry about the data that feeds these models and how you keep it secure and local to you. And as a result of that, it's going to depend on the quality of what you make available, how well structured it is, how easily you can manage it from a security point of view, how effectively it can be referenced by different tools and by users trying to understand what those tools have decided and how they've decided it. So regardless of what your AI strategy is today or where you see it going tomorrow, every bit of effort you put into structuring your data, making it available, making the data sets clean and complete and easily accessible will be time and money very, very well spent, both from a day-to-day operations point of view now, but much more importantly from how you begin to adopt the features that are starting to come online from AI. And then finally, as you begin to build all of these things, you need to think about scaling it. And there are really two key themes in that. One is in your processes. AI is an area that will change very rapidly. So being able to constantly deploy new updates, new features, new changes is going to be critical to getting the most out of it. And secondly is cost control. If you take Copilot, fine, you pay a license fee and Microsoft do the rest for you. If you start building AI models, you can very easily run into significant cost if you don't carefully design those products and keep on top of how they're running and how they're being used. To some extent, it's very similar to any of the cloud costs, the consumption-based costs, but I would say more significant with AI and likely to become even more significant as the companies providing these try and monetize their AI operations more effectively, whereas at the moment they're mainly focused on market share. So splitting up your different categories of AI to be able to focus on them in different ways, building those data sets that are going to underpin everything we talk about, and then having the ability to innovate and to scale rapidly are really, I think, the areas in which we can talk about the different kind of capabilities that an organization needs to get the most out of AI. And then when it comes to how we do it, again, this is like how we would tackle anything with technology. First of all, we figure out what it can do. All right, with AI, you might need a little more emphasis on the inspiration side of trying to get people thinking slightly differently about what's possible to do with AI and where you can apply it. But you're still trying to take a business problem and find a solution to it that's effective, going to deliver value in a reasonable timescale, and work with the principles and the designs that you've already got. And then once you've got that, you need to design it. You need to work out how to put together these blocks of AI. And again, this is something that changes very, very fast. So either you've got to have a very good understanding, or you've got to work with a partner that can bring that to you. And then you've got to build it and you've got to deliver it. And I think in that delivery side of it, the ongoing support and management of those AI models and the maintenance as all of these features underneath change to take advantage of it is going to be probably an area requiring more focus than perhaps it does with traditional technology deployments. So hopefully that's given you a few things to think about just in terms of where some of the use cases we're seeing AI are today and where we think you should be focusing your attentions to prepare for taking advantage of the constantly evolving set of features that we're seeing coming through and will continue to come through over the next months and years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pete, for amazing presentation and really webinar. So I will be in touch with everyone personally, send you recording and the slide deck. Unfortunately, I have to wrap up. So hopefully to see you soon for our other related events. We always do a HSO. So thank you very much for attending.